Hello and welcome to section 4.2 of the Forecast-Based Financing Manual. In this video, we will cover how to identify impacts and select early actions. This process includes identifying the impacts and the risks associated with a particular hazard, prioritizing those impacts, coming up with the early actions, and narrowing and eventually selecting the early actions that will be included in your protocol. The four main questions guiding this chapter and this phase of protocol development are: what are the impacts of the event you are trying to address? What are current responses to warnings and impacts? What could be done in the lead time before the event to reduce those impacts? And what actions can your national society or organization accomplish given the lead time? The selection of early actions is an iterative process. You will begin by asking yourself what information you need to move forward, and then you will make a plan to get that information. For example, you may need more information about the impact of heat waves in your context and decide to consult data archives and speak to key stakeholders to get that information. Once you have a better understanding of how heat waves impact people, you can decide where you need to dig deeper into specific impact pathways or what you need to better understand which impacts are most critical to affected populations. This process will lead you back to the first question about identifying and seeking new information. You will repeat this process, asking questions until you are satisfied with the information you have collected and have finalized the selection of your early actions. Steps 1 and 3 of this section of the manual ask you to identify impacts, risks, and potential early actions. This can be done quantitatively, as in how many people are affected, or qualitatively, as in how or why people are affected the way they are. You can look for data to answer these questions in international databases such as Desinventar or EMDAT. The INFORM or GFDRR databases may also have information relevant to your protocol. National data sources can also be an important resource. Government ministries such as the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, or Ministry in charge of disaster management may keep general records of losses or illnesses, or may have data linked to specific hazard events. Government and NGO reports and plans, such as contingency plans and in some cases academic journal articles, may also help you to understand what happens during extreme events and why. Your national society or partner organizations may also have records of previously conducted vulnerability and capacity assessments or other community consultations relevant to your hazard of interest. And of course, you can collect your own primary data through consultations with communities. Participatory methods, such as vulnerability and capacity assessments, or focus group discussions, interviews, community visits, and stakeholder workshops are all excellent ways to hear directly from people affected by specific hazards. The Anticipation Hub also hosts the Early Action Database. This database is a compilation of potential early actions from Red Cross, Red Crescent national societies and a growing number of other organizations involved in anticipatory humanitarian action. You can use this database to see what other actors have done to mitigate disaster impacts by searching according to organization, country, hazard, sector, or the purpose or mitigating effect you wish to have. Be sure not to overlook this resource for early action inspiration. Steps 2 and 4 of this chapter ask you to prioritize both impacts and potential early actions. As you can see from the screenshot of the manual on this slide, the manual covers at least 15 criteria that can help you prioritize your early actions. The important thing to remember is that there is no single way or best way to do this. It might be that not all of the criteria are applicable to your situation, but the more perspectives and the more criteria you consider, the stronger your final protocol will be. Also note that the Red Cross, Red Crescent Early Action Protocol guidelines put forward by the Validation Committee for FBA by the DREF require that you demonstrate feasibility, do no harm in the implementation process, and select no regret actions whenever possible. To provide an example of how a national society used these criteria to select early actions for their protocol, I would like to walk you through some of the thought process behind the selection of early actions for Mozambique's Cyclone protocol. At the time that the Cyclone EAP was being developed, cash transfers for disasters were not allowed by Mozambican law. Cash transfers might have been an effective way to mitigate the most severe impacts of cyclones, but cash assistance did not align with national policy. It was therefore quickly eliminated as an option for the first version of the Cyclone EAP. If the government revises their laws and cash becomes an option down the line, Mozambique Red Cross may explore whether cash should be included in future versions of the protocol. Through stakeholder workshops and consultations with potential beneficiaries in Mozambique, it became clear that assisting with evacuation and reducing damage to housing, schools, and other infrastructure, such as roads and electrical lines, were top priorities. However, Mozambique Red Cross doesn't have the expertise or the mandate to protect roads or to work with electrical poles, so early actions in those areas were not explored. Providing assistance for evacuation, however, does align with Mozambique Red Cross's mandate. The National Society staff consulted with many stakeholders about how to operationalize evacuation assistance. However, there was not an existing network of cyclone shelters in Mozambique at the time, and Mozambique Red Cross eventually decided it would not be able to establish memoranda of understanding with transport providers and take charge of evacuation sites in all vulnerable districts. As this would be needed to activate the protocol wherever impact would be greatest, evacuation assistance was also shelved until further notice. Another potential early action, early harvesting of food crops to prevent damage and loss, would only be beneficial if disaster struck in the small window when crops were ripe, so that early action was eliminated based on timing. In the end, despite minimal evidence that shelter strengthening could work in the Mozambican context, because no one had ever tried it, Mozambique Red Cross decided to test the feasibility and effectiveness of distributing shelter reinforcement kits. Eventually, the results of activations will help build evidence base for whether such early actions can be effective. I'd like to end with a few key points for you to keep in mind while you identify and select early actions. Selecting early actions is an iterative process, and the EAP should be a living document. So remember the cycle of questions at the beginning of this presentation, and keep in mind that your EAP will be revised at least once every 5 years, or based on the lessons from each activation. Actions that may not be possible today can be revisited in the future, so it may be useful to have a record of actions you considered but discarded, and to note why. Consult as many stakeholders and experts and get as many perspectives as possible. Test your assumptions and eventually your early actions. Developing detailed theories of change for each action, the subject of the next video, will help you to be transparent about how exactly you expect to deliver benefits through your early actions, and to make sure you are not omitting any important steps during planning or activation. Keeping these points in mind will help you to ensure the feasibility and the maximum benefit for the people you are trying to reach. Finally, don't choose something just because you have to, but don't be afraid to make mistakes and to learn. And when you do learn, please share your experiences through the Anticipation Hub. Anticipatory action is a relatively new concept, and all stakeholders will benefit from sharing ideas and experiences. Thank you for your attention, and good luck identifying and selecting early actions for your early action protocol.